So if you are going through spring, and let's talk about how we eat, okay, and in reflection of how everybody probably should at least consider eating. What are some foods you might eat in the spring? Give me a couple foods, a couple herbs, and then I'll share a couple as well as we move into that season.
In the springtime, yes, I will do some foods that I will do deeper green juices. I know it sounds very, very, basic, but it's the truth. I'll do green juices because it's the springtime. I actually will put a little Schisandra berry powder in my smoothies because Schisandra is very good for the liver. I will try to incorporate some milk thistle and dandelion in some ways to sort of flush the gallbladder out. And those are some of my mainstays. Food-wise as well, you always need to make sure that the gallbladder is basically liquefying the bile. So I always try to resist like the rich, creamy foods. I say don't eat a heavy dairy and don't eat, when you go to the Mexican restaurant, skip the queso, just maybe have a little salsa or something, but don't go to those deep, rich, creamy foods. Those are my mainstays for
and I think most of you will recognize these are foods you'll start to crave at the right time of year. So really the spring season is really March, April, half of May. And as Dr. Chris, he hit the nail right on the head with everything he shared. In addition, it's green foods, it's sour foods, it's Granny Smith apples, it's spirulina, it's more steamed green vegetables, it's vegetable juices, it's a lot of greens, a lot of vegetables, a lot of things that are cleansing and nourishing. He mentioned dandelion and milk thistle, also things like burdock are great, chlorophyll, but doing some things to sort of help energize and cleanse your liver. Gallbladder is great through that time of year. And then we move into summer, right after spring. And the color of those foods, where spring was green, these foods are more red and brown. And so what are some of those foods and supplements let's also do this. I do want to mention the spring is also the time of rebirth. So what you should have done the winter before, which we'll hit on this, is set goals. Well, now in the spring, you're birthing those goals. You're taking action in order to turn those dreams into a reality. And so it should be very, very future oriented and taking action towards a future vision you have for you, for your family. Let's dive into to summer and do what we call the fire element.
I try to keep it very simple in even my diet. Like if it's going to be red and it's red colors, I try to use things that actually encourage the strength of the heat. So I'm thinking cayenne pepper.
And it's the heart, right?
It's the heart. The heart's really about joy. You need to practice emotionally things that will make you joyful. Like make sure in the summer you're taking a vacation that you're joyful. I can be very adamant about it. But do like good spices. I love red spices, crushed red pepper, jalapenos that are almost like red in color. I think when you encourage the heat, people think, well, why would you do that? It's the summer. It's like, no, you're encouraging the strength of the organ, and you actually will help your metabolism even better within your heart if you take those types of foods. So I'm always about the peppers in the summertime. I think that with different types of herbals, the one that I love the most is called red sage. We talk danshin. Danshin is like one of my favorites. You cannot go wrong. It's Chinese medicine, big heart remedy. Another one for the redness of the summer is hawthorn berry. Hawthorn is one of the best berries you guys can get. It cleans the heart. It's one of the biggest heart cardiovascular herbs in Chinese medicine. So if you guys go with those two, danshin and hawthorn, and one of the coolest things too now is that hawthorn cleans up so much infection. So you're going to find out that these foods for those seasons are going to kill off infections too. Like cayenne helps your heart, but it'll kill off viruses and bacteria. So those are like my recommendations. Like people think it's weird to eat soups during the summer. I get it, but some soups with some pepper in it's not too bad.
Yeah, and what's so interesting too is all of these different, and this is called the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. Think about Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or disc profile or the Big Five. Again, it's the Big Five. This is the Big Five before we called it the Big Five. This is not only though looking at your personality profile, but it's also looking at seasons. It's looking at the foods you should be eating. And so think of it in that way in terms of sort of Western thought. And there are different nationalities that tend to gravitate towards just living this way more. For instance, Japan is very, very wood element, and they're a lot of water too. They're a mixture of wood and water, which basically means you're going to see a lot of green. I mean, I'm watching Cobra Kai is one of my favorite TV shows right now. And you got Miyagi, it's this picture of this tree, it's a bonsai, tree. So it's you're going to look at those sort of foods and flavors of doing things that are, rice noodles and broth and cooked cooked and steamed vegetables and steamed rice. It's that sort of cuisine you want to be doing in the spring. And then we think of a country like Spain or Mexico where you're doing more spicy food.
Yes.
You know, you're doing that in that season. As you mentioned, some great herbs I'd throw in there, especially for women. Dong Quai is a really good blood builder for women.
Great.
Beetroot juice would be wonderful for everybody. So getting those reds, even coffee, you know, and so, and chocolate. And so that summer is a time so where spring is growth. You want to focus on growing yourself, personal growth as much as possible. Not that you don't want to do it all year, but you want to prioritize it in the spring. Whereas in the summer, it's, as you mentioned, it's fun. You want to take more vacations. You want to read novels. You want to watch comedies. You want to spend time with family laughing a lot. That's really the season for doing that in the summer. And it's really connected to the heart. And so you want to focus on that. And then the next season we're moving into is around the fall.
Yes.
And that's when the leaves are, we start to see, even before the leaves change color, it's really probably mid-August through maybe mid-October to end of October. At least in Nashville, Tennessee, it's going to be a little different for different areas of the country. But that's connected to what we'd call the earth element and the digestive system. And what are some things you recommend there, Dr. Chris, for people?
Yeah, when we get into the earth is for the stomach and the spleen. So you always go towards like those, when it's starting to eke into that way, you always look at sort of the yellow type foods. And I think that you and I are really big proponents of like, for earth elements are going to be like ginger, and we're going to think about certain types of maybe shallots or onions. And when it starts to go into the fall season, when that earth element is really, really taking effect, you have to remember that all the fun and all the things that were growing and that you performed in the summer with the fire, like I got it done. Now you're going into this, what they call the result of your work. You're supposed to be singing, like you're supposed to make sure that you're at a time where you're feeling very comforted from the work you did. But all that to say is, remember that the healing of your stomach at that time is preparing you for the fall time because you're going into hibernation. So you better strengthen up your stomach to have its juices ready to go so you can eat and put on some weight and get ready for the winter.
Well, and you're also preparing it. We'd encourage a lot of warming food because you're getting ready for the cool of the winter. So this is where in the fall you start eating more soups. You do shepherd's pie and you do a pot pie and you do, and it's Thanksgiving and it's a lot of orange foods and sort of yellow bridges that gap of the next season. But you do want to start getting those in the fall. And so it's a great thing. And this is also the time where you want to focus on, really strengthening, again, they call it the earth element, but it's really your pancreas, it's your stomach, and it's you want to get cozied up. Like you want to wrap yourself in a warm blanket, have a cup of warm tea, start doing that this time of year. Yep. Grounding in, nesting is one of the terms they would use as well. And so what are some of your favorite herbs and things for that season? For the late season,
or for the earth time, I really love, my favorite is chrysanthemum. It's got that yellowish tinge. I love ginseng and ginger. Those are my favorite. Like with the healing aspect of the stomach, I always say get the chrysanthemum in there because it will clean up, guys, viruses, yeast, mold, bacteria. It'll clean up so much, but it gives a strength to the stomach and to the pancreas and the spleen. And so what they call it is you don't want to have rebellious stomach chi or pancreas chi where you're going to feel nausea. So that builds that area up. And ginseng and ginger, both of those have been shown clinically, they will basically clean you up of salmonella or H. pylori, all the fun you had in the summer, all the food you ate. Those are the herbs I really, really like. There's a few that I could go deeper into, but they're combinations. But what are some of your favorites in that season?
I love pumpkin pie spice, and some of the ingredients there. So that's going to be cinnamon. It's going to be clove. It's going to be ginger, as you mentioned. And so it's going to be those warming orange, red, yellow-ish foods that you're going to see in the fall. That I think are really, really good for most people. But I'd say just use a lot of pumpkin pie spice. I put about an eighth to a fourth of a teaspoon. That's a clinical dosage. An eighth of a teaspoon, I want to say, is around 1,000 milligrams.
Oh, wow.
And so, of pumpkin pie spice. And we typically don't think of that as medicine.
No, we don't.
But it is. It really is. I had a patient one time who had diabetes, which, of course, is pancreas related. And I had her just start changing her breakfast to where she was doing a smoothie with basically collagen, protein, coconut milk, and then and now she went overboard. I'm like, do an eighth a teaspoon. She was doing like a full teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice in her morning smoothie.
Yeah.
But we reversed her diabetes in about 40 days.
Wow.
Yeah, reversed it. And you and I both, I think that's a common thing we'll both see. But my point there is, I mean, it was a form of medicine for her, really, really powerful.
Yeah.
In order to do that.
That's funny because like I was reading, when you say pumpkin spice, like I didn't know like the qualities. I mean, I always think of it as food, but I remember seeing this article because at the office, I still look at things when I'm working on somebody. I'm like, what would help their pancreas? And one of the things was pumpkin spice, and I didn't realize that. And then other ones, like if you look at cleansing ground up spices or foods, pumpkin seeds are good too. I didn't know that. It clears up parasites and stuff.
Hey, we're gonna get there. Let's not jump too far ahead.
We're not gonna get too far.
So, and then we move into you got two more here, and then we're gonna dive into some really specific protocols for Lyme, for parasites, for viral infections, long COVID. So going back to this, Chris, now we have winter. Okay, this is the leaves have fallen. Okay, when the leaves start falling, that's moving into what we call the metal element time, and that's the really part of winter, and it's late fall. Yeah. And during that time of year, it's a lot of white foods. It's the very light yellow and white. And so we're going to see this is a time of year where you need to let go of everything from the past. If you have not forgiven someone, if you had some form of abuse as a child, if you wanted something to happen, it didn't happen, or you lost a loved one, something happened. This is the time of mourning, grieving in a healthy way, forgiving people, and getting ready to move on towards the future. And I think about this, we've had a hard year in our house because we lost my father-in-law, Joel. I know you loved him, and Dr. Chris was close with my father-in-law. And so we've been sort of supporting my mother-in-law through that, but that's been hard for our whole family because he was, like for me, he was one of my best friends. I mean, he lived with us. He was a father figure for me, and probably outside of my wife, probably the person I was closest to in the world. So I've been going through that in this season right now, and even thinking about as we go into Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it's tough, it's tough when you go through, whether it could be a divorce, it could be losing someone close to you, something like that. But it's really important to not gloss over it. It's important not to shove it under the rug. It's important to grieve. It's important to also be thankful for that person being in your life and even reflecting on who they were. Because I think a lot of times it's easier to kind of numb out and just try and not put yourself in those situations where you have to grieve and you have to cry and you have to mourn. But I think that knowing what I know and it's actually very important to, and it's very healing. It's important to spend time with family. It's important to keep the pictures up. It's important to remember, I know like him and I used to always sort of like both literally together cut the turkey every year, and so I know that's going to come up and that's going to be a time of like, I'll be remembering him when that's happening. But my point there is it's very important that this is a time of year where before you move into the new year, where you reflect, where you grieve. If you haven't grieved, again, those things that you have swept under the rug the whole year because kids are in school and you had summer and just you were busy.
That's good.
Well, now's the time you really need to focus on forgiveness and healing and preparing yourself to move forward into the next year.
That is good, brother.
Yeah. And then with that comes, as we've talked about, and feel free to share after this, but I would say just, this is also an important time to consume certain foods for this. And it's chicken bone broth. It's ginger as well. Ginger kind of crosses over into both immune and gut, even as an herb, and it does it with both seasons. It's going to be miso as another food. It's going to be pears, it's going to be cauliflower, but foods that are white and light yellow and spicy, horseradish, those sort of foods, you really want to support the lung qi this time of year. And so, so anything you can do like echinacea, horseradish, those sort of things to get the blood moving, get the lungs moving, doing a little bit of extra cardiovascular. Is going to be really cleansing and healing this time of year as well.
I love the way you put it because the horseradish, echinacea is to build the strength of the organs you're just talking about, like the lungs and the large intestine. And it's very important, as Dr. Axe talked about, like when you need to let go, that the biggest organs, most people think it's your bladder and your colon, which it is. You know, your sweat gets rid of toxins or things that you process. But in Chinese medicine, even the books that I read, they'll say, you process the things that you've forgotten about. You're living busy life. And two of the biggest ways is through your breath, getting rid of toxicities or things you need to let go of, like a cry, grief. That's right. And also letting stuff out of the colon, which is, did I process everything I needed to from what I pulled in during the summer and during the fall? Like, did I let go of it? So it's really amazing that in the Chinese medicine world, they'll say, take the herbs, take the foods that cause those organs to naturally want to let go, because it's trying to preserve you. It's like, eat the horseradish. You're going to eat those, the ginger. You're going to have, like, I love astragalus. I love andrographis. There are some, like, even I throw, even though it's a green color, like sometimes olive leaf, but it's not as white. But those two are some of my top choices with the food you just mentioned to actually help encourage the strength of those organs to push those things out. And it's not like I'm saying you had to forget it. No, I'm just saying you need to process it. Like you just said, just keep grieving, because what people will find is if they don't do the horseradish or the echinacea, or they don't prepare their body to fight off the viruses and fight off the colds, they'll actually get constipated emotionally and physically.
Yeah, this is important. This is a good time of year to do higher dose probiotics, do the echinacea, ginger, all those things. Do a lot of herbal teas. You want to start doing those a lot in this winter. And this is really going to be end of October, November, December is going to be this metal element time. And remember, this is the time of year to let go. To let go of those things, forgive, move on, prepare for what's ahead. Yes. And then we move into the last phase here, and this is what it's called the water element in Chinese medicine. This is one of these 5 types, as we've talked about. And this is really about the time to go deep. Go deep spiritually, go deep mentally, spend time meditating, spend time praying, spend time going deeper in your life, building and start to get those roots deeper and deeper, so then you can grow taller in the spring, in the summer, and this time of year. And this is really connected with the water. It's connected with colors that are blue and purple and black. So think about foods like blueberries and blackberries and mulberries, these sort of foods that are very dark and rich in color. And those are going to be very nourishing as well. And then there's a lot of great herbs. I'll let Dr. Chris talk about these first. But this is where, again, you need to be still. You need to really create time in order to goal set, to plan, to prepare, for those things that you're going to birth in the spring.
Oh, I can't add anything to that. That's amazing, because like when you look at the blue colors, like, and you encourage the strength of the kidneys. Me and Dr. Axe, we nerd out sometimes when we talk about, like, when he talked about growth, because the kidneys are all about the water element and they feed the wood element, and the wood element grows. And we have to think about it in our physiology too, like, he's giving you the recommendations to actually strengthen the kidneys and the bladder, which allows you to hold on to more fluid, be able to take the proper moisture, feed it up into the liver and the gallbladder, so you actually will increase your metabolism, getting ready for the spring. I do love one of my favorites. I know it sounds pretty, everybody takes elderberry. I get it. But elderberry is like one of the best things you can do during that season, like when you have kidney and bladder. I do like another one called Phyllanthus. It's called the stonebreaker. A lot in South America, they use it for like stones in the gallbladder, the kidneys, and the liver. But the kidney is like one of the best ones that I like. So I always say this. You don't have to go get Phyllanthus, but I'd say try elderberry. Try something that's very basic, simple. I love the blueberries and the blackberries because they're so high in antioxidants. And your body is preparing your liver for the growth. So remember, you got to make sure you get the blackberry and blueberry in. Look into elderberry. And I do like kidney healers, like good mushrooms like reishi, even though they're kind of brown. There are certain mushrooms that you and I talk about that are very healing to the kidneys, and they're supposed to, in Chinese medicine, increase like the grounding effect of the kidneys, because the kidneys pull a lot of electricity in for your liver. And I during even the winter months, guys, everybody out there, I'm not supporting any product. I'm just saying, look into some good medicinal mushrooms. Like look into them, like reishi, shiitake, sometimes maitake. Look into those, and those can actually help the kidneys too during this time of year too. But always tell my patients, I go back, and when you said you want to go deep, I say, remember back in your personality, like, did you ever have a kidney or bladder infection? And a lot of times those individuals will go back, oh yeah, I got a kidney infection when I was when I was younger. I go, okay. Were you going through some fearful times? Were you going through some times where you were afraid or you could not move ahead? So in kidneys and the bladder, the emotions can be, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that somebody's going to be better than me. I can't get ahead. I'm stuck. I can't move forward. If you remember that time with your bladder and kidney infection, there's a huge correlation. So you want to use what you just said to help pull out those infections, because your brain will remember. Like, after I have people that come in, brother, and they'll go, yeah, I started getting rid of that infection. I remember when I was like 7, this kid beat me in a race. This guy, I was like, okay. And I looked back in our Chinese medicine books and I was like, fear of not getting ahead. Somebody else is better than me.
Yeah.
And I went, I've been missing that this whole time. But anyway, guys, look back into your past and look into the fear, because you have to go deep. You have to get rid of those fears. What is making you afraid in life?
Yeah. Fear is that a negative emotion that's really tied with this water element, and if you've got a lot of fear in your life, it's important that you start preparing to face those fears, writing down, what are those things I'm afraid of, facing those fears. And part of the way you do that is going deep. Part of you doing that is building a deeper connection with God, because if you start building a bit deeper relationship with God and knowing who He is, those fears that you have are easier to overcome, knowing God is for you, not against you. And so if you can really meditate and embrace those truths, it's powerful. And I want to say, we're not saying that this is the only time of year to meditate and pray. No, you should be doing that all the time, especially spending time in prayer. But this is a time to spend more time doing it compared to other times of year. And to go deeper, because it's very nourishing to those adrenal glands. Think about it. This is the time of year where it's almost like you've got a battery, like you're plugging in certain organs. Like, this is the time of year where your adrenals, your kidneys, your bones, some of these areas of your body are more plugged in. You're supposed to be giving them more juice and more battery life. And that's how you do it. That's how you do it with those adrenals and kidneys, is getting way less, and you want way more parasympathetic and going very deep. Reading those spiritual growth books, those sort of things is going to be very important for nourishing these organs. And I love, as Dr. Chris mentioned, the medicinal mushrooms like reishi, cordyceps, chaga are all fantastic. And then you've got, a lot of the adaptogens. It's the rhodiola rosea, it's the ashwagandha, it's the, a lot of those herbals that are going to be more adaptogenic and adrenal building in nature are going to be really great this time of year as well. And again, the foods are going to be against water elements. So it's seafood. It's doing a lot of, foods like salmon would be great, berries, and those dark black, blue, and purple foods are going to be really good. Black rice, that sort of thing, is going to be really nourishing this time of year. So remember, you want to nurture your body, depending on your own your own constitution, whatever's going on within you, because you might be a person that has IBS with diarrhea and you're in the middle of summer. Well, you may still need to, or spring or fall, and you may still need to be warming your body all year, because that's a deficiency you have.
Yes.
But as we talked about this, there's definitely an element of leaning into some of these truths based on the season that you have going on within your life and those sort of things. And so that's going to be very, very, very helpful and healing. Hey, if you liked this, then watch my full episode right here.